Senator Perdue, thank you for joining us today. We just came off the stage at CPAC and had a good discussion on national debt. Now we're going to get to have a discussion on something pretty important, almost equally important, perhaps more important right now, and that's what's going on our southern border.
Yeah.
You just returned from a trip. You were down there with Senator Steve Daines to the southern border. What'd you see?
Well, I was shocked. I mean, I was not prepared to see what I saw. Steve Daines and I went down there. We went out overnight on a patrol with the Customs and Border Patrol people, and we were actually part of them apprehending a group of people, Hondurans actually, coming across the border that night. And as bad as the human traffic is on the southern border, I was not prepared for the explosion in the drug traffic coming across that border. Fentanyl is up 73% across the whole southern border. Methamphetamine's up almost 40%. Enough fentanyl was imported illegally in the United States last year to kill every man, woman, and child in America. I wasn't prepared for that.
Amazing, amazing, and yeah, and we just have no ability to know how much of it is coming across the sun.
No, we don't. I mean, the military and the Border Patrol people tell us that they're only interdicting and capturing about 7 to 10% of what they think is coming across, and that is backed up by the Southern Command combatant commanders in the military who see these drugs down in Central America and so forth. But what we have found out by being down there is the wall works. In 3 places over the last 30 years, 4 different presidents have built wall down there, in California and Arizona and Texas, and where they built the wall, illegal traffic dropped 95%, both drug and individual. So what this has done is it's pushed all the traffic now down into hot sectors, and that's where we went. We went to McAllen, Texas, an area that I'm very familiar with in the Valley of Texas. And there are 2 cartels that are controlling the illicit travel of humans and drugs across the border. They're in Mexico. Every individual they bring across the border pays the cartel $8,000 for the trip. Every person we arrested that night had not one dime of cash in their pocket, but they had a burner phone with a number. And the cartel had people in the United States who were picking them up and taking them to a city. And we asked these guys, where are you going? Well, New York, Miami. One guy said Woodstock, Georgia. So this is a machine down there, and the money is so important. The human traffic coming across the border in that sector is about $2 billion a year, based on that $8,000 stipend. The drug traffic we estimate is greater than $30 billion.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Amazing. And so, I mean, look, this issue seems on its face just so plainly to be a major threat to the United States, but we can't get any movement with the Democrats. Not a bit. I mean, we just went through this. We went through the government shutdown.
Right.
They won't give an inch. Try to put yourself in their shoes. What in the world is the motivation?
I don't know. I think they think it's political, that they're going to get more votes if these illegals come in and ultimately get the right to vote. There's a lady that ran for governor in the state of Georgia that actually proposed that illegal immigrants have the right to vote. That's the only motive I can come up with. The frustration I have is that it's political. Every Democrat that voted against Donald Trump's request for a wall, actually last year, 44 Democrats in the Senate alone voted for $25 billion for wall funding, and yet later when we got to the actual funding of just $5 billion, they wouldn't do it.
You know, it's amazing. I've got this theory, and maybe you think it's crazy, but you look at the Democrats. The Democrats are increasingly becoming a party of the super elite and the poor. And they've hollowed out any support they used to have in the middle class. That's one of the reasons why President Trump won in 2016 was working class Americans came over. But you look at what do the elite in this country want? They want open borders, right? And the dynamic of open borders really serves big corporations and the elite in the country more than anybody else. And the Democrats have kind of gone into cahoots with them in a sense. And because the elites on the left will at least be with the Democrats on identity politics and sexual politics and all this cultural stuff, they seem to be comfortable, a little too comfortable with them. I mean, talk about that. Is that something that you see?
Well, I do, and you saw it in the elections in 18. 85% of the money that was spent in the governor's race in Georgia came from outside the state. And most of it came from the elite billionaires that the Democrats complain about. The very billionaires that are backing all of the activity the Democrats are doing is leading this charge toward this radicalism. I don't even call it liberalism anymore. I never thought, Tim, in my lifetime that I would have to defend capitalism against socialism. When I was 16, my dad had me read a book called The Gulag Archipelago, written by Solzhenitsyn, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And it showed that everything that happened in the Soviet Union failed, and that it could happen here.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so concerned now, because a lot of young people don't have the life experiences to see that this has been tried before. I lived in France when they tried to do they did a lot of these social programs that they knew they couldn't afford, and here they are later knowing now that they can't afford that. And yet our radical left wants to take us down that same road that failed. Venezuela, Cuba, the Soviet Union. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is such an important issue for the party and the movement, really. And I think we've got to do a better job of talking about immigration, not just in terms of culture, but in terms of those working class issues that we care about as a party. And I mean, if you look at the left has completely changed on this issue. I mean, Cesar Chavez used to be against immigration. Why was he against it? Because he knew that when there was unfettered flows of illegal immigration, it was the people who came into this country legally who were being hurt in terms of wages.
Right.
And this is not just a security issue. It is a security issue for certain, but it's a middle class, working class economic issue.
Well, you said it best. I mean, the Democratic ethos of bigger government, more spending, the government knows more about what you need to do in your life than you do, has failed. We've had a 100-year march towards socialism. It didn't just start in the last election cycle. In the early 20th century, we've had in the last 100 years 4 supermajorities. That's where the White House, they have 60 votes in the Senate, and they have a majority in the House. We've had 4, all Democratic. And in those 4, they gave us the New Deal, the Great Society, and Dodd-Frank and Obamacare. And I can put at the feet of those 4 supermajorities most of the responsibility, this debt that we've got, and, oh, by the way, they have all failed. Let me give you 2 examples. In 1975, before the Department of Education was even created, our 14-year-olds were #1 in the world in math and science. Today, after spending trillions of dollars of this top-down, federal government-driven education, our 14-year-olds are now 25th and 26th. I don't need any more evidence of that, but watch the poverty issue. In 1965, the Great Society was signed. They started this great war on poverty, spent trillions of dollars trying to eradicate poverty in America, and guess what? The poverty rate today in America is exactly the same as it was in '65 when the Great War on Poverty was started. These social programs don't work. Individual liberty, economic opportunity for everybody, free capital flow. I mean, this works. And what the Democrats are saying, no, everybody in the country should make the same amount of money. And oh, by the way, they want to give every person in America above a certain age $30,000 a year, whether they're unable to work or unwilling to work. And I'm sorry, that just isn't what America was built for.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so finally, let's talk about where we are right now in this current debate. I mean, there's a lot of focus on the president's national declaration of emergency. What's your perspective on that, and how do you see this shaking out in the Senate?
Well, I actually concur. Now, I was mixed, honestly, when this was being debated in the White House about whether he was going to do that. Now, we hoped it wasn't necessary. We hoped the Democrats would have stood up and actually funded it like they've wanted to do in the last 30 years. I mean, they've all called it a crisis, and that's why we're here. Now, having been down to the border, I can absolutely tell you, in my opinion, we have a full-blown 5-alarm crisis, and it's the drug crisis that's exploding on our southern border. The walls work, we know that. Every president since H.W. Bush has built wall, and President Trump now is just trying to continue to protect the country. He had a promise, and that is that I will move to gain better border security to have national security to protect Americans. That's his responsibility as Commander-in-Chief. I am appalled the Democrats, after saying they wanted to do it, now say they don't want to do it, actually call it immoral, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Senator, thank you for your time. We appreciate your leadership. Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much for what you guys do. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it.